time for Sports Wrap on 90.5 WASU FM.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I am Jason James, pleased to be with you here on another edition of Sports Wrap. It is such a pleasure to get to be here with you all this evening. We got a full house tonight. Got a lot of fun things to talk about. Going to get into some Super Bowl reflections, some MLB stuff, and some NBA stuff. We very seldom ever have anybody in the studio on the show who knows enough about MLB to talk about it. So I'm glad we finally have some people who can all talk about it for once. So, as I said, I'm Jason James. I'm your host. To my left is Stephen Biddix. To his left is Cody Bear. And then on the other side of the table is Jeff Marson. So, fellas, how we doing?
Doing good. I mean, extremely happy to be here on a Tuesday right after the Super Bowl. First show back. We get to talk about it. Only one group gets to do this, so happy it's us.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. It was a good game, too.
You know, I haven't been on the show in a while, so it feels good to be back in the sports wrap chair. You know, chat a little ball with the boys. I'm looking forward to a good hour.
I like that, ball with the boys. Yeah, Jeff hadn't been on the show in a while, so it's good to have Jeff back and joining us. So as you all probably know, I like to start the show off kind of with a question, and I should have put this in the rundown and I didn't, but I'm adding it anyways. So, you know, we talked about the Super Bowl and the commercials and how everybody loves the commercials and pays attention to the commercials and everything. So, made me wonder, what's your all-time favorite Super Bowl commercial, if you could figure out one?
Yeah, looking back at some Super Bowl commercials in the past, one that really sticks out to me, I think it was about like 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago, the Volkswagen Star Wars commercial, where the little kid was dressed up as Darth Vader, and he would think he was starting the car with the Force, but his parents were doing it from the key the whole entire time, back when kind of like, I guess, wireless key starts began. So that one kind of always stuck out in my head. That was just pretty funny to watch.
Yeah, I have some favorite brands that kind of do their commercials. I know, like, Bud Light back in the day did really good ones. Doritos, more recent. I like what State Farm's doing. I liked theirs last year, I think it was, when they had Mahomes, Rodgers, and Drake was trying to join the team. They have some fun ones.
Yeah, I'm not one that pays too much attention to the commercials, but one that stuck out a couple years ago was the Doritos time machine, where they gave the guy the Doritos, goes in the cardboard time machine, and you know the old man comes out and thinks he time traveled. So that was the one that popped in my head.
I remember that one. That one was one of the more popular ones that year. I liked this year's. My favorite one was probably the one where they were all like miniature-sized kind of thing, playing football and that sort of thing in the commercial, like Peyton Manning, Lamar Jackson. There were some other guys. Derrick Henry, I think, was in there too. But I would have to say one of the most iconic ones is probably the Puppy Baby Monkey commercial.
The Mountain Dew one?
The Mountain Dew one. That one, it's funny. You know, you look at these commercials and it's like, man, why do people love a commercial like that? But they do. I mean, they absolutely love it. And then the bowling one this year was pretty cool too. I like the bowling one as well. I thought that one was pretty awesome. So we're going to go ahead, I guess, and get into the show. So as I said, we're going to begin the show with kind of a reaction from the Super Bowl. So clearly, I'm sure all of you know by now, the Rams did win the Super Bowl. There's a lot of speculation about whether the Rams had what it would take to beat Joe Shiesty, and they finally did. So I want to kind of go around the table and get you all's thoughts on the Super Bowl itself. What did you like? What did you not like? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm really happy the Rams won, especially happy for Matthew Stafford. After all of that just torment and time and pain, kind of like what Joe Burrow's going through with his offensive line, Stafford had to deal with that in Detroit for so many years, and just such a bad organization all the way from the owner to the GMs and down. So really happy that he won. He could possibly be on his way to a golden jacket now that he does have that first Super Bowl, because his stats are there, unless you're Richard Sherman, who doesn't think at all that it is. But Matthew Stafford's stats are there and getting there because he's only 34. We see quarterbacks playing a lot later now. So it's nice to see him win. Nice to see Cooper Kupp with 2 touchdowns, 92 yards, coming in clutch at the end and taking some massive hits in that last drive too. And Stafford extremely clutch in that last drive. That was 3 games in a row he led a comeback drive. Aaron Rodgers only done that one time in the playoffs, and he did it in back-to-back games. And looking at the Cincinnati side, while Jamar Chase was a great pick, I mean, Joe Burrow's on the Andrew Luck track right now, the way that he is just getting absolutely obliterated every single game. He got sacked a record 7 times in the Super Bowl and a record amount of times in the postseason as well. I mean, just 16 sacks between 2 out of the 4 games between Tennessee and LA. It's insane. I saw a funny mock draft today where all 7 rounds, it was 7 picks of offensive linemen for Cincinnati, which may not be too far out there because Joe Burrow's a stud, as we've seen, but he can't be taking hits like that all the time.
Yeah, I'm super happy for the Rams, as you mentioned. I think Matthew Stafford will be a Hall of Famer. Whether he should or not is up for debate, but I think people really remember those Super Bowl rings, and he had a great postseason. And the Rams came, they did what they came to do. When the Rams put in those 2 first-round picks for Matthew Stafford, the big thing was the goal is clear. They're going to win a Super Bowl, or they're going to try to win a Super Bowl. They went out and they got Von Miller and OBJ, and both of those players made a huge difference. OBJ really got the game started for the Rams. Von Miller had 2 sacks. So they bought in, and it worked.
You mentioned it, Cody. The Rams really sold out just for one Super Bowl. As you mentioned, the trades for Stafford, Beckham, Von Miller. I mean, they don't really have much of a future past this. They sold out. They were going in on this year, and luckily for them, it worked out. And I'm trying to figure out really how the Bengals lost this game. They didn't really lack in any area besides pass protection. They stopped the run, better than, just about any team this postseason. You saw it in the Super Bowl. The Rams just averaging, 1.9 yards a carry. Really put it on the arm of Matthew Stafford. But like I said, the Bengals on offense, they had the big plays necessary. Their run game was working at times. It's just tough to figure out how in the world that they lost this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. I was happy that the Bengals won. I was happy that Joe, or I'm sorry, not the Bengals, the Rams. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here listening to everybody's levels, and I'm trying to adjust them while I'm talking to y'all. But no, I was happy that the Rams won. They were my Super Bowl pick. They weren't my pick to necessarily win it, but they were my pick to make the Super Bowl. And I had said from day one, with Matthew Stafford when he was in Detroit, probably halfway through his career in Detroit, or his stint in Detroit, I always said, look, if you give Matthew Stafford some weapons, Matthew Stafford, you'll see how great of a quarterback he actually is. And Matthew Stafford went through so many guys in Detroit, after Megatron that were just disappointments, really. I mean, I believe Kenny Galladay was one of the guys that they brought in thinking there'd be a lot of promise there, and there wasn't. And then they go out and draft a offensive lineman, Matthew Stafford's last year in Detroit, thinking that's going to help him. Ends up not. But Matthew Stafford got weapons. He got protection on the offensive line, and he did what he should have with it, rightfully so. And I like that about the whole buying in thing. I think that the Rams said, look, we want to win a Super Bowl. We've been close. We're going to be aggressive. We're going out and we're going to win it, especially with it being in our home stadium. So the question is going to become now, Aaron Donald said he'd have to think about maybe retiring because, he's won everything else he could possibly win with his position. And then you see Sean McVay, there's a lot of conspiracy now. He said we'll see when somebody asked if he'd come back for another year to coach the Rams. Von Miller's a free agent now. So, you don't know. You don't know if the Rams will be back to this point at all. I think they have a chance to. And that kind of brings me into my next question, I guess. Out of these 2 teams, which one will get back to this opportunity the quickest, or this game the quickest?
I'm going to go with the Rams. I think they still have the better overall roster. And if you look at the path to get there, the AFC is so much stronger than the NFC right now. You're looking at the NFC West. You've got Russell Wilson, who could be on the move. You have Kyler Murray throwing a temper tantrum in Arizona. And then you have the Trey Lance, Jimmy G situation where if they had confidence in Trey Lance, you thought you would have seen him a lot more this year than you actually did. So I don't know if he's really ready to go yet. So the division the Rams are in are much easier than the than the Ravens, who are going to bounce back with Lamar Jackson and just had an ungodly amount of injuries this past year. You have the Browns, who, while Baker struggled, he was hurt, still have a very good overall roster. And then you have the Steelers, who have some electric players on offense and a really good defense and one of the best rushing defenses in the NFL. And the AFC North is just a brutal division every year anyway. So I like the Rams' opportunities to come back a lot better than the Bengals anytime soon.
You're not saying that just because you're a Steelers fan, right?
No. You notice I don't really say much about the offense. I said we had weapons. It's the defense I'm looking at. But, I mean, the Bengals, they got to find something to protect Joe Burrow.
Yeah, when you look at both of these teams, for the Rams, they have a lot of big money guys that it's going to be hard-pressed to keep. Jeff, you mentioned it, they really bought in, and now it's going to be tough to keep that future on the right track. And when you look at the Bengals, I will say that they have a lot of cap space coming in. They better use every single penny on an offensive line and draft O-linemen because, as you said, Stephen, he's on the Andrew Luck track as it is right now. That being said, I'm going to agree with you. The AFC is just so tough right now. I mean, you have the Bills, the Chiefs, the Titans. Russell Wilson could go to the AFC. Aaron Rodgers could go to the AFC. I think just the road to getting there, a lot of people are kind of like, Joe Burrow's that guy, which he is, but they're discounting how tough it is to get to the Super Bowl and saying they'll be back. I don't think it'll be that easy.
I think the Bengals are better fit for a long-term run, but as you mentioned, the Rams just are in the cupcake NFC as of right now. But, you take a look at some of their free agents. Darius Williams, their second corner. You got Odell Beckham and Von Miller, of course. Will they be back? Odell, I think he will. Von Miller, he may as well retire at this point. He's got nothing else to accomplish. Aaron Donald, you mentioned, may retire, which came out of nowhere to me on Sunday. The Bengals, to me, are better fit for long-term success, although maybe they don't have the better roster at this point. As you said, the cap space, they've got a lot more than the Rams do. It's going to be a critical offseason for the Bengals. They just need to build up that offensive line. There's a few guys that they'll be looking at, like Teron Armstead from the Saints, for example. And they also probably need some help in the secondary. You can't have Eli Apple covering Cooper Kupp in the most critical time of the season.
That poor guy. He got obliterated on social media.
Maybe he deserved it, but taking a look at that, that may be just a coaching issue, but the Bengals do need some help back there. They need to re-sign Jesse Bates, who is a free agent, but they've got the money to do all of that, so the Bengals just build up that offensive line. The rest of their roster is still built for a long-term run here.
Yeah, I think you're looking at really two different sides of the spectrum here. You've got let's just say, young core in the Bengals, and then on the other side, you've got an older core in the Rams. And so you would think that the Bengals would probably be in the best situation here to return quicker, because we know that they're probably not going to be going anywhere unless for whatever reason they just completely tank, for the next couple of years, and this is just some fluke of a year, which I don't think it would be, but we'll see. I think everybody in the entire world that knows anything about football knows that the offensive line has to be has to be adjusted and it has to be fixed. And you never know. This Super Bowl run that they made might help them a lot with free agency. Might help them a lot get some top tier free agents on the offensive line. On the offensive line to give Joe Burrow protection. The Rams, I think, have the opportunity, just because I like what y'all said about how weak really the NFC is, especially that division. They've got now you don't have to worry about, if you're the Rams, you don't have to worry about going through Tom Brady anymore. You don't have to worry about that. And really, besides that, that's really it as far as getting to the Super Bowl. And so I think the NFC right now has, is perfect for the Rams in the situation that they're in, just because I feel like the level of, not necessarily talent, but the teams that you have to beat to get to that Super Bowl is a lot difficult in the AFC than it is the NFC. So I think there's a little bit more hope that the Rams would get there sooner, but I think when you look at the long term, I think it's absolutely going to be the Bengals. And you got to wonder now if the Rams will end up tanking and just falling completely off that Super Bowl hangover, get the best of them, and they just completely end up falling off the map. So I don't know. We'll see. So I want to. Now that we're talking about this Super Bowl, I want to go ahead and get into next one. So the Super Bowl next year, right now, the two favorites to make the Super Bowl for next year are the Bills and the Chiefs. So I want to get your kind of predictions on what team you feel like has the best chance coming into the year of winning the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, if there's only any way we could get the Bills or the Chiefs to move over into the NFC, because I think that kind of was the Super Bowl a couple weeks ago when that insane game happened. And I think the Bills are going to be the best team in the NFL. Josh Allen was my MVP pick going into this past year, and I really thought this was going to be the Bills' year. And I think they're going to come back even hungrier next year. So I'm going to go the Bills on the AFC. And the NFC is kind of where it gets tough because I still like the Rams again a lot next year. But then I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to leave Green Bay either. I think he's going to go back. They said they're going to go all in for him. There's not really a trade that makes too much sense for both parties because if you're Aaron Rodgers, why in the world do you want to go to the AFC with Burrow, Mahomes, Josh Allen, a Patriots team that's just going to keep getting better, the Ravens? I don't know why you would want to do that, but the Packers aren't going to want to trade him in the NFC and then him knock them out in the playoffs or him have to see them throughout the season. So I'm going to go with the Bills against the Packers next year.
Yeah, mine is super similar. I like the Bills out of the AFC. They're getting closer and closer every year. Josh Allen's right there, in my opinion, for being the best quarterback in the league, competing with 2 or 3 guys. Their defense, I know their defense kind of blew it against KC, but we can't forget they were the number 1 ranked defense this year. And then for the NFC, I like the Packers if Rodgers stays, and a lot of that, and I like that you mentioned, why would Rodgers leave, is because a lot of that's the competition in the NFC. I think the AFC is way more competitive than the NFC. Rodgers will have a great chance of making the Super Bowl if he stays there. I say this every year, and then they somehow manage to lose right there in the playoffs every year. But I'm still going to keep picking them as long as Rodgers is playing the way he is, back-to-back MVP, doing unprecedented stuff. The Cowboys look good, but they always, blow it at the end of the season. The Cardinals are in turmoil. For the Rams, worst-case scenario, Donald retires, Miller leaves, OBJ could sign somewhere else. I think they're going to have a tough track staying as good as they are. If they're able to, I like the Rams, but if not and Rodgers stays, I like the Packers a lot.
Well, I agree with the both of you on the AFC side. I'm all in on the Bills bandwagon next year. They've got to break through at some point. They've had so much bad luck in the playoffs these past couple of years. You have to think at some point they'll be able to break through because I think they were the best team in the league this past season.
Too,
even though they're not the Super Bowl champions, I thought they were the best team. And taking a look at the NFC side, again, it's really just a crapshoot on that side. There's a lot of what-ifs with free agency going on. But I'll take the 49ers because I think, their roster top to bottom is still very good. They're a quarterback away. So I think if they play their cards right this offseason and figure out that quarterback problem, they should be in contention for that Super Bowl spot.
Would you go with Trey Lance or stick with Jimmy G or go somewhere else?
Or Tom Brady going to San Fran.
If that's on the table, I would go with Tom Brady. But, you still always have to look at the free agent market. But, even if it's Trey Lance, I still think they have a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't count out the 49ers in the NFC, but I think it's going to be, if Jimmy G signs back with the 49ers, I think that's when you're really going to see, okay, maybe the 49ers will be a team to watch out for in that division. I agree a lot, Jeff. I think the NFC is such a crapshoot, really, with what team you're going to get. There's not just one team that just completely stands out in your mind. And then I'm going to go with y'all, too. I'm going to hop on the Bills bandwagon also. I think that the way that the Bills season ended this year, I think it's going to end up lighting a fire in them, and I think they're going to end up playing some really good football and some consistent football all year. They're right there. They're so close. And Josh Allen is a phenomenal quarterback. He's got great help. Stephon Diggs helps. So Cole Beasley plays pretty well for him at times too. And so they're so close, and I'm happy for Sean McDermott. Going to Buffalo from Carolina and going to Buffalo, and ended up having a lot of success there. So I'm gonna roll with the Bills as well. That might end up changing as the season gets closer. We'll see, kind of based on how the preseason goes and the first week or two of the season. But I'll stick with them. So this next one, I kind of want to pick your brains just a tad on this next one. It's pretty clear that this guy was the best receiver in the league this year. But is Cooper Kupp one of the best receivers in the NFL, or the best receiver in the NFL?
I think he's definitely one of the best receivers in the NFL. I mean, he won the Triple Crown, 1,947 receiving yards, 16 touchdowns, 145 receptions, and he was the Super Bowl MVP. It's pretty tough to find somebody else that has a better single season than that. So, I mean, I don't really feel too uncomfortable saying Cooper Kupp had the greatest individual wide receiver season. Not calling him the greatest wide receiver of all time, but I would say definitely the best individual season. You just don't see things like this happen. And shout out Cooper Kupp. He cashed my Rams win and 2 touchdowns together. And, but yeah, I mean, he had just an absolutely insane season. I think probably the greatest single season a wide receiver has had. But for my money, I still think Devonte Adams is the best receiver overall in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it boring and go with the exact same thing. It's hard to say a guy who just won the Triple Crown isn't the best receiver in the NFL. I mean, he was obviously the most productive. And like a fun fact for you, there's only 2 receivers in NFL history that have a Triple Crown, Offensive Player of the Year, and Super Bowl MVP in their career. That's Kupp and Jerry Rice. The only difference is Cooper Kupp did it all in 1 year. Mm-hmm. But if I get to choose any receiver in the league to kind of start my team with, I want Devonte Adams. He's been the best, PFF highest graded receiver 2 years in a row. He's caught 96.1% of his catchable targets this season, and he's still doubled almost 30% of the time, so you have to keep that in mind.
I feel like it seems stupid to just say he's not the best receiver in the NFL because, a lot of people who say, wide receiver's not based on production. I mean, look at what he's done. He's first in literally everything, almost 2,000 yards on the season, 16 touchdowns, darn near 150 catches. I mean, his worst game the entire season, he had 61 yards and a touchdown in the playoffs against the Cardinals. I think a lot of people are drawn away from him because he doesn't do it in the most flashy way. He does it by good route running and, getting good passes from Matthew Stafford. But, I mean, Cooper Kupp, he's got to be the number 1 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, you would absolutely think, just based on this performance this year, that it's pretty clear to me that Cooper Kupp is the best receiver in the NFL just this year at least. But you got to wonder, if Robert Woods would have gotten hurt, would Cooper Kupp have the numbers that he had this year? That's a question you got to ask yourself. I'm happy for him. I'm thrilled for him. He was a 0-star recruit. Ended up getting an offer from Eastern Washington. Okay, couldn't remember, but ended up getting an offer from them to go play football. And when you want to go to the next level, you'll go wherever offers you, especially if it's just one offer. And he went there and had a lot of success. Then comes in the NFL and has absolutely just torn it up. And he's very fun to watch, that is for sure. I mean, he's got great hands. He runs routes exceptionally well. I would have to say Devonte Adams, I know 2 of you touched on it. Devonte Adams, I feel like, is that receiver that kind of flies under the radar. Not a lot of people really pay attention to the success that he has. Devonte Adams is one of the most reliable receivers in the NFL year in and year out. Another guy, if you wanted to throw him in there when he's completely healthy, you could always say, DeAndre Hopkins, maybe. You could always throw him in there. There's a bunch of guys. I think this year, though, I think it was pretty evident that Cooper Kupp was the best player or the best receiver in the NFL. And it's awesome to get to watch what he does, especially when you get all these receivers come in the league, and then it's only fitting. That's got to feel like a huge honor to be right there with Jerry Rice with all those accolades and all those awards. So I love seeing that. I love watching him play the game of football. He plays it with passion and love and fuel. We'll see next year, though, with Robert Woods coming back, how well he continues to play, you know?
I don't see there being much of a difference because, Odell Beckham came in and filled that Robert Woods role, and Cooper Kupp kept his numbers up. So I don't really see that being too big of a deal unless Odell Beckham also comes back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be kind of a toss-up. It's interesting to see how the ball is going to be distributed next year with those receivers.
Yeah, well, I think we know Cooper Kupp won't be the one distributing the ball, though, after that trick play throw that Matthew Stafford, he just completely airmailed him.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. That no-look pass, though, to Cooper Kupp was pretty nice, too.
He's been doing it his whole career.
Yeah.
Mahomes is getting the glory for it, man.
Yeah, that's
Aaron
right.
Rodgers said that on the Pat McAfee show last year when he started doing that. He's like, Matt Stafford's been doing this for like ever. No one's just paid attention to him because he's getting the bottom of the level broadcasters and all of that stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't get nearly the national TV time that a lot of quarterbacks would get. But now that he's in LA, he's gotten a lot of it. So it's pretty cool. I'm happy for Matt Stafford. I really am. I think now you could make the strong debate that he's going to end up, in Canton. We'll see. There's still several years. How does it work in the NFL? How long do you have to be retired before you're eligible? Is it 5 years?
It's 5 years.
Okay, all right. I thought it was 5, but I wasn't sure. I wanted to be absolutely sure. So we're going to take a quick break. We got about 34 minutes left in the show and still got a lot of great things to cover. So we're going to take a short break, get some water, and move on. So don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll have some MLB baseball. We'll get into some MLB and the lockout and all the drama going on in the MLB. So this is Sports Wrap presented by Eggers, and Eggers right here on your college, your station, your music.
This program is sponsored by Eggers.
No crying! There's no crying in baseball!
Why don't you leave her alone, Jimmy?
Oh, you zip it, Doris! Rogers Hornsby was my manager, and he called me a talking pile of pig. And that was when my parents drove all the way down from Michigan to see me play the game. And did I cry?
No.
No! No! And you know why?
No.
Because there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in baseball! No crying!
Welcome back to Sports Wrap. You heard it there from Tom Hanks in a league of their own. There is no crying in baseball unless you're a baseball fan, and then you're internally crying, I guess, because pitchers and catchers were supposed to report today, and that did not happen. So you got to wonder now if maybe we'll just do it like they did in this movie. I mean, I know it's not the same context, but create a league for women to play in and just let the women play, you know? I mean, it's better than nothing, but I know it's different historical era and that sort of thing, but you know, still a great movie, and I felt like it was necessary to play, especially with us getting into the MLB. So as I said, pitchers and catchers were supposed to report today. I believe the Orioles were actually going to originally report like the 12th, 13th, something like that. Mm-hmm. So they were going to report early, and
they need it.
Yeah, seriously. But anyways, that clearly has not happened due to no agreement on a new CBA deal. So collective bargaining agreement, if you don't know. So I want to kind of see how much longer is this going to last. You know, I mean, at some point, one of these two has got to budge, you would think.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because this is the second time in extremely recent history we've seen this. We saw this with the COVID kind of lockout a couple years ago when they were trying to figure out how many games they were going to play, how the money was going to work, and things like that. And that took a while, and we're supposed to have opening day on March 31st, so pretty much exactly a month and a half away. I think they'll still hit that opening day mark. I mean, there's no way that the season doesn't start because while they're both like just two little kids arguing back and forth and not wanting to listen at all to what the other one has to say, both sides lose an immense amount of money if they can't find any common ground. And at the end of the day, money is what runs all of these sports leagues. So I think it'll happen by March 31st, and I think they'll start just because if you're Manfred in the MLB, you can't not have all of that revenue coming in. And if you're the players, you don't want to not get paid.
Yeah, and I think with the NFL season just wrapping up, it's starting to put more pressure. You know, as we're starting to see, we're getting closer and closer to when MLB is one of the biggest sports going on, and if you delay that too far, you're going to miss a huge opportunity. But I'm starting to hit the panic button. I'm starting to get a little worried that the season's going to have to be delayed a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be delayed a little bit as well. It's usually the players who, break first because at the end of the day, I mean, they just want to play. And so I think that's why they'll break first, even if they don't get the money that they need.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I saw where the next, I guess, meeting that they'll have, the MLBPA and then the MLB, I believe it's the 28th of February. So I think that's going to be the next. And Rob Manfred still is dead set on the season starting on time, but you got to wonder, okay, if they come to an agreement and it's too late for spring training, do they just take like 2 or 3 weeks and just do very quick developmental type stuff to get them back in the swing of things? I mean, yeah, of course, you've got these guys who are in the off season. You've got these guys who are working out, on their own and individually, but you gotta take the time to rebuild the kind of team, I guess, chemistry. If it's not there, you got to have all that time, and so you can't just say, okay, February 28th, we've got a deal. We'll have a season March 31st. You've got to give some time for these guys' bodies to develop and for them to get back in the swing of things and everything else. So, I think right now it's just the fact that there's just them both being just super stubborn and neither one wanting to budge. Because, like I said while we were on break, I think it's going to end up coming down to, the MLB is just absolutely refusing to do a lot of this. I think I saw where they're wanting to increase the arbitration pay and everything else. But the MLB is like, all this does is just lose money for us. It loses money out of Rob Manfred's pocket and all these MLB execs. And I think that they're trying to avoid that as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, and if you're the MLB PA as well, all of these guys grew up like playing in the minors. That's how they got to the pros. And in this last proposal, the MLB wants to put something in place where over 900 players across the minors would all just kind of be cut, lose jobs. And that's on top of the MLB cutting over 40 minor league affiliates in just the past 2 years, which, I mean, is just brutal looking at it from a player's perspective. And kind of going back to you, Jason, on about spring break, I mean, yeah, if it gets pushing like March 15th, March 16th, they don't have at least a month to kind of warm up and get ready to go, you're going to see a ton of injuries this coming MLB season. If the pitchers aren't getting to work on their stuff in spring training and kind of escalate those innings from 2 to 3 innings, 4 to 6, and working their way up, and players' bodies just adjusting back to that grind, they're not going to be able to get into that 162-game grind without like a half-decent spring training session.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to stuff like smaller money things, the players have budged in the past, but I think that's a thing where the players aren't going to budge. And I think there's a couple other things that need to happen. Like the MLB owners can manipulate when like players are called up to make an agreed upon 6 seasons into 7. And I think, a lot of the players, the last 2 times that CBA negotiations have happened, the players are the ones, they let the owners win. I don't think that's going to happen this year.
And back to Steven's point about the minor leagues, I mean, that's not just important to the players, but to all the local economies where teams are. I mean, that creates a ton of jobs, whether it's front office or even just working concessions. That's still money in the town's pocket as well. I think minor league baseball is super important when it comes to Major League Baseball. And as you said, I mean, the players are usually the ones to break first, but it does seem a little bit different this time because all the minor league pay has been going more public, at least or their like living situations have gone more public in these past couple of years. So, maybe I think we'll see a change.
Yeah, you would hope for a change. I know minor league baseball is where I'm from. It's a pretty big deal. I mean, the new team. The Intimidators went away. Now you got the Cannonballers, new stadium, everything. People love going to their games. I mean, they sell out sometimes. I mean, it's a great thing to do. People love the minor league. I mean, you got an hour down the road. You've got the Crawdads. An hour and 15 down the road, down 421. You've got the Winston-Salem Dash, and then down 421-77, you got the Knights. So. I mean, there's baseball. Minor league baseball is important.
And where I'm from in the Triangle, you got, of course, the Durham Bulls, who are probably the most important minor league, or one of the most famous minor league teams. And I mean, I love going to their games. I went to a ton of them growing up, and they're always so much fun. So, I mean, cutting all this funding for the minor leagues just. It doesn't sit right.
And all this is doing, too, is baseball's already having a trouble getting younger people to play and to watch the sport because it may not be as exciting to watch like football and basketball is, how it's like nonstop action. Baseball is a lot slower. So being able to get kids to these smaller market minor league games is a way to get like younger people back into the game. And this is just contradicting that completely.
Gee, I wonder why the Durham Bulls are so popular. You mind? I'm just kidding, but yeah, no. I mean, and I love the one thing that I love is how the MLBPA is really taking up for the minor leaguers. We saw last year where minor leaguers were treated horribly. My dad, he's an insurance agent, and one of the guys that he knows, actually. It's one of my dad's clients. His son actually played in the minor league system for the White Sox, and he would tell my dad all the time that the pay was so miserable and so bad, even back then, and this was several years ago, that guy would have his son live with him, and then 4 or 5 other ball players would squeeze in the house too, just because they couldn't afford apartments and they couldn't afford to live on their own, so they'd try to get as many of them together as they possibly could to make it as cheap as they possibly could. And so I like how they're standing up for the minor leaguers and saying, look, we're the present of the game, but the minor leaguers are the future. The minor leaguers should be treated just as great as we are. I mean, obviously the pay isn't going to be there, but I still think their voices should be heard.
Yeah, well, when you're looking at Rob Manfred makes $11 million annually, and over half of the minor leagues is below the poverty line, that is a massive issue in my opinion. I mean, that's just ludicrous that they're making between $8,000 and $12,000 a year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. I completely agree. So you mentioned Rob Manfred, Steven. Rob Manfred, like I said earlier, said that he has full intentions for the season to start on time, but even if the lockout ends at the end of February, there's no guarantee they can get the season started in a month. And so, we kind of talked about. I'm going to skip that one just because we kind of talked about what needs to change or what has to change, I guess, for these two sides to come to an agreement. I mean, what's the one key factor that is keeping these two sides from coming to an agreement?
I mean, it's just money. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. The players seem okay with the expanded playoff format, which we've already seen, the universal DH and some other things that have gone on. But the players are really just sick and tired of it, and it seems like they've been sick and tired of it before. I don't know if you guys know the Lil Baby lyric, I'm tired of being tired of being tired. And that's kind of where the players are right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's money. I mean, there are game changes that could happen, and I think it's important. The game kind of drags. And I get the idea of old-style baseball and respecting that beauty of the game. But if we want younger people to kind of buy into the MLB, it's going to have to speed up. I like the idea of an expanded playoffs. But yeah, what's keeping it from happening is a money issue. I think the owners, a lot of the times, do try to manipulate the system a little bit and limit earning power. And I agree with you, Steven. Like, the players are fed up.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything left for me to add on to that. It's just a money issue. I think the players deserve it. And you talked about the minor league stuff. I definitely think the players don't back down. I hope they don't, and fight for what they deserve.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't really have a whole lot more to say to that. Money, we could make the debate that money is, kind of ruining in a way, in some cases ruining professional sports. We could talk about that debate at a later time, I guess. Maybe I'll put it on a rundown at some point. But I guess we kind of agreed on what's missing from an agreement happening. We all said money, and then we all think it's just, well, I'm reading my rundown here, and I didn't realize that all my questions were the same.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that all my questions were the same. But now that we're kind of talking about, I guess, baseball and that sort of thing, who's the one team once this season gets officially started, whenever that may be, who's the one team that y'all will kind of, I guess, have to keep your eye on? I mean, I know there's still a lot of free agents on the market still, but of the teams that have already made free agent additions, what team would you be keeping your eyes on the most?
I'm keeping my eye on the LA Dodgers just because of what they always do in the offseason, but also because Trevor Bauer is not facing criminal charges for what he did. So we're not 100% sure what the MLB is going to do about him yet, but Trevor Bauer could be returning, former Cy Young winner, to the Los Angeles Dodgers and just bolster that team even more than it already is.
Yeah, I like the Dodgers a lot. I like the Brewers. I think they have a really good bullpen, and they're kind of working towards becoming a true contender. And then the Blue Jays, of course, Robbie Ray, Marcus Semien, obviously Vladdy. I think they're going to be really good next year.
Well, taking a look at just some free agent signings, a team that you're going to want to watch is the Texas Rangers, because they took Corey Seager from the Dodgers, and as well as Semien from the Blue Jays. And also signed Kevin Gausman as well from the Giants, who had a great year last year. And another team I'm looking at is the Mets, who went, they spent a lot of money this offseason with Max Scherzer, as well as a couple other guys like Starling Marte. So I'm interested to see how those two teams perform with their new upgrades.
Yeah, it's funny. Everybody swore last year that the Mets were going to end up winning that division, and that ended up not happening. But the Rangers are a team that you're going to have to keep your close eyes on. I think already they went and got Jack Leiter in the draft. I think he's already like one of the top prospects in their whole farm system. So, I mean, you got to wonder if maybe within 2, maybe 3 years he ends up making his debut one day. I mean, you never know. The Rangers would be a team that I would keep my eyes on. I like the Mets a lot. The Brewers, if their pitching is half of what it was last year, again this year, they're going to be right there in the mix again. I mean, it was crazy seeing almost all 5 of their starters had just under or just barely over a 2.0 ERA. You know, so I mean, both of their guys. I mean, both were right there. I mean, or they were all 5 right there at just pitching phenomenal baseball. And so I think there's a couple teams really, and it's going to be hard to fully tell until the season officially gets started and you get all the free agents re-signed. You know, where's Carlos Correa going to go? Where's Trevor Story going to go?
You have Anthony Rizzo out there too.
Anthony Rizzo. Where's Freddie Freeman going to go?
Chris Bryant, Nick Castellanos, a bunch of guys.
Yep, a bunch of guys.
That's kind of another thing to tie this all together. We're talking about playing time for spring training. We still have like top 50 players in the MLB just floating out there, not knowing what team they're even going to be on.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all a mess, and you know, if there's any, you know, with all the baseball fans out there, they're just like, look, let's just play. Like come on now, like what's taking so long? Let's just get this together and play. So I'm hoping that all this gets fixed very, very soon. Spring training is a very exciting time. We grew up, or I grew up, going to spring training games as a kid. You know, I went to the Yankees one just because we're Yankees fans in my family. But we also went to like Phillies and Reds spring training games. And so, you know, growing up, you want now, especially at 22 years old, you want baseball to come back and come back around. But it is close. I think App baseball season actually starts Thursday. Friday. Okay.
Friday at 5.
Friday. Couldn't remember. Yeah, they play Campbell.
They have their first 7 games on the road. Their 8th game is in Charlotte against South Carolina, and then they come back home March 4th for UNC Wilmington.
Yep.
Gauntlet.
And you talk about a hard month of the season.
Yeah.
My goodness, they're playing 3 against Campbell, then they play 3 against Duke, then they got South Carolina. Then Wilmington.
And Wilmington's always spicy too.
I was gonna say Wilmington's always spicy. So I mean that. kudos to Kermit Smith for getting those schedules in there, because I mean that's gonna be a challenge. I mean, Campbell's a very solid baseball program. Duke has been pretty solid the past couple of years, and you know, of course, Wilmington. I believe Wilmington made a super. Did they make a super last year? I can't remember. But Wilmington's pretty solid too. So it's baseball season is close. Even if it doesn't happen in the MLB, it will happen everywhere else: college, high school, little league, t-ball, all that. So we're going to go ahead and I guess move on now. We're going to get into some NBA. So the NBA trade deadline was last week. I believe the 10th. I think was the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a couple of big names. Ben Simmons traded. James Harden was traded. Then there was a few smaller guys that ended up getting traded. A lot of them got cut during a trade, and so I want to kind of see who won the trade deadline.
I think there were a lot more losers than winners, per se, in the trade deadline. The whole Harden and Simmons situation, I mean, the Sixers, I mean, yes, they got James Harden, but they got an out-of-shape James Harden. And what
He's always out of shape,
He
man.
is, but what we've heard, too, like, because after these trades happen, kind of more whispers start coming out more and more. Harden's been not being in Brooklyn while he's been hurt. He's been going to Vegas to party, fly back to Brooklyn, not going to away games, showing up halfway through. But, you know, as Charles Barkley said, hey, maybe he's healthy now because now he got traded last week. That was pretty funny. But I do like the Sixers if they can, like, keep James Harden kind of on a plan, because he can play that ISO pick and roll ball with Joel Embiid. I like that fit a lot. I'm really excited to see how that fit works. And then going to the Brooklyn side, I'm really interested to see when Ben Simmons actually takes the court, because it's not like James Harden where he's going to take the court as soon as he gets healthy. Ben Simmons is still meeting with the counselor in Brooklyn, getting established with that. And so I don't know, nobody really knows when he's actually going to end up playing for Brooklyn. But I almost think the Seth Curry pickup from Brooklyn is almost better than the Ben Simmons pickup.
Oh, man.
Because, dude, Seth Curry is another shooter out there you can put on the wing. You know what he's going to give you, and I just don't know what Ben Simmons is. And so while that trade, I mean, it all worked out, it's still not, like, great for both sides. Then you go to the Mavericks trading Kristaps Porzingis for Spencer Dinwiddie and David Bertans. I mean, if that doesn't show you what Porzingis was in the locker room in Dallas, I don't know what does. And then you go to the Boston getting Derek White, which I kind of like too, because Derek White's a nice little player. But that means they're probably going to cut Dennis Schroeder, and he'll be on the buyout market. And I think he'll end up going back to L.A. because LeBron was trying to get them to get him anyway at the trade deadline. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's too many winners. I think a lot more losers than winners, personally.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, it's tough. I don't give anybody an A+ kind of trade deadline. I'm still hesitant to say Ben Simmons is going to be a difference maker for Brooklyn. I think his defense is going to be huge for the team. I do like them picking up Seth Curry. I think he just had 23 points in his first game with them. Meanwhile, I do like the 76ers going after Harden because I think they were very close to wasting another prime year for Joel Embiid. So it's very important that they kind of become a contender. And then I like some moves like the Pacers going and getting Tyrese Halliburton. Mm-hmm. I think he'll be great. But also, I don't like that they traded Karis LeVert, even with the first-round pick, which was lottery protected, but I think the Cavs are making the playoffs. But even then, I'm a big Karis LeVert fan. So I think, with the ups and downs throughout, I don't give anybody an A+, but I think it was still a fun trade deadline to watch.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Cody. I mean, no one really knocked it out of the park when you take a look at the trade deadline. But, I mean, there's a few teams that made some good moves, as you mentioned, the Pacers. I mean, getting Tyrese Halliburton for Sabonis, and they also got Buddy Hield in that deal, which was also great for them. So they've got a future to build around there. I mean, the Hornets made a small deal. I think it helped them a lot. I think it was a great move for them. They got rid of two pieces that they didn't really need. Trading Ish Smith opens up more minutes for James Bouknight. I know a lot more about the Hornets than a lot of other teams just because that's the only team I watch.
That's something I've wanted to see all year is Bouknight get some minutes, and we just have not seen that at all.
But we're finally getting those, and of the big trade, I think the Nets win that trade personally, just because they got some younger pieces. As you mentioned, Seth Curry's played some great minutes already, and they also got 2 first-round picks out of it for a guy that didn't even want to play for their team. So I think the Nets got that one.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with y'all. I don't think there was just one team that kind of just blew it out of the water this trade deadline. I think it's hard to not say the Pacers and the Kings trade, maybe just because it was so big and there were so many names who were traded away. But, with the drama, with everything with Ben Simmons and James Harden and all that, it was almost inevitable they were going to be gone. James Harden said earlier today that Philly was one of his top choices that he wanted to go to before ending up with Houston, and so he finally made it back to Philly, the place he wanted to go. So now, Jeff, you kind of swung into it. When will the two biggest things that got traded, Ben Simmons and James Harden, make their debuts? Because they said James won't make it till after the All-Star break, and Ben Simmons, we just don't ever know about Ben Simmons.
And Ben Simmons is quite the secret when it comes to just literally any information about him. I don't really know too much about his situation with getting settled in Brooklyn, but I'd imagine he can, get settled by the end of the All-Star break. Hopefully he'll be able to be back by then to help the Nets make a push because they've been struggling as of late.
And they need him too because they have a rough schedule coming up after the All-Star break. They play Boston, Milwaukee, Toronto, Miami, Boston, Charlotte, and then they go to Philadelphia on March 10th. And I don't think he'll be making his debut back in Philadelphia, considering he wouldn't play for them at all. But that would be something. So I'm going to at least put it past March 10th because I just don't think he has the balls to show up to Philadelphia again and play.
Yeah, I mean, he reported to the Nets, and he's practicing, which is a good sign that he'll be back sooner than later. I do think if he does come back right after the All-Star break, he will tweak his ankle or something in Charlotte so that he doesn't have to play in Philly. But I think he'll be back in time for that tough part of the schedule. And James Harden, I think, probably right after the All-Star break.
Ben Simmons said he was eyeing a return to play against Philly, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and just assume that neither one of these guys will play until after the All-Star break. But it's just a matter of when they decide to play or when they're healthy enough to play. I think now Philly has a pretty good chance to win with James Harden. I saw a thing where KD, Kyrie, and James Harden, I think, played in 40-something games together, I think, their whole time in Brooklyn as a tandem. So that was surprising because everybody...
It was a lot less than that.
Was it? It might have been.
It was less. I think it was 18 games.
Oh, 18. Okay, I was off then. It was a while since I saw that, so I was off. But I think everybody was thinking Brooklyn when they got those three was going to be like legit, and it just it wasn't there at all. And
No.
So
And another thing, because apparently Harden was frustrated with, he doesn't have his chip yet. KD does and Kyrie does. Kyrie's playing half the games. KD's been hurt, and this is not what he kind of signed up for at all. Granted, I don't like what he did in Houston, but he expected to play with KD and Kyrie every game when he got to Brooklyn, and the farthest thing from that has happened. And Brooklyn's sitting there at 30-27 in the 8th seed, with Kyrie still only playing half of his games, and KD still injured. And it was not what James Harden signed up for at all in Brooklyn. And apparently, him and Kevin Durant were also beefing over play style. Steve Nash and Kevin Durant wanted a more like flow-centric ball movement play style, while James Harden wanted to play his typical ISO offense, and they couldn't see head-to-head on that either.
Yeah, I don't blame him for wanting out for exactly that reason. No matter what your opinion is on the Kyrie situation, at the end of the day, he is missing half the games, which, as you said, James Harden didn't sign up for. He's desperate for a ring. The other two guys, maybe not as much. I'm not saying like winning rings gets old and they don't want to win, but when you look at what Joel Embiid's doing right now, and I do think that offense kind of fits Harden's play style more. Yeah, I don't blame him for wanting to go to Philly.
yeah, no, I think that it's it was a mess. It was a mess. They were both unhappy. They both got what they wanted. They both got out, and now all you can do is just wait and watch and just see which one flourishes more. And it's funny because every team James Harden has played with outside of OKC, of course it's only been 2 other teams, but everybody said, okay, this team might have a chance to win it all. This team might have a chance to win it all, and they have yet to do that. And Ben Simmons said that he did not speak with Joel Embiid on his way out. So got to wonder, maybe there's some internal tension there. Joel made it pretty known that there wasn't, but still got to wonder. So we're going to move on really fast. One final question. We talked about last week before the trade deadline how the Hornets were in desperate need, really, of a big man to be, at the level of legitimacy that we had all hoped they would become. So they go out and they get Montrezl Harrell. Jeff went ahead and touched on it. They traded away Ish Smith and another player. I'm trying to think who
Vernon
it was.
Carey
Thank
Jr.
you. Vernon Carey
Dookie.
Jr. Vernon Carey Jr., yep. He was supposed to be pretty promising and had a lot of injuries. So did the Hornets do enough? Did MJ do enough by getting Montrezl Harrell?
I don't really think they solved their problem by getting Montrezl Harrell.
You think it's just like a Band-Aid kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. They needed help on internal defense. I mean, Mason Plumlee really isn't good at anything, so getting a big guy is...
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
I mean, if you watch him night in and night out, it's beyond frustrating, but Montrezl Harrell is a great addition. Although he's a bit undersized, he's given the team a new attitude, I feel like. And he plays, I think I already said, he plays with a lot of passion. He's a great rebounder. He's great on finishing the pick and rolls with LaMelo Ball there. So I think really the Hornets have established what they want to be, and that's just to outscore every single team that they play, because they have no good defenders on that team outside of maybe Cody Martin. So they're going to be a lot of fun to watch, but sometimes when that offense isn't there, they're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define enough. I think the Hornets will get into the playoffs, at least a play-in, but, I mean, that's kind of what they had expected going into the season. Obviously, this doesn't make them close to a contender. Harrell played well in his first 2 games. He had 20 points and 9 rebounds on Saturday, but as you said, Jeff, this doesn't help defense in the paint, defense at all, really. Going into the season, one of my favorite targets as the trade deadline got closer was Miles Turner. But, he got injured and things kind of got blurry. They couldn't make it happen. So I think they're still going to get dominated in the paint.
I think Harrell will help because he has a level of physicality, and he will, I think, help in the transition defense some, because he's going to be the first center the Hornets have had in a while that runs a sub-6 40-yard dash. So that'll be nice, I think, for the Hornets to help. I don't think it's a major needle mover, but it's some actual, an athletic, physical guy down there, unlike Zeller that we've seen kind of was a brick down there, and Plumlee is as well, just super stiff in the paint. And like Jeff said, this team's just going to try and outscore you because they're not going to be able to stop you on defense, and they can't wait to get to the All-Star break too, with injuries piling up, like Gordon Hayward hurt once again. Extremely frustrating off of that contract, because that's what everybody was worried about, because that's what happened in Salt Lake, that's what happened in Boston, and now it seems to be happening pretty regularly here in Charlotte too.
Yeah, I like this move a lot by the Hornets. Montrezl Harrell is a fun guy to watch play in the NBA. Him and Terry Rozier are reunited back in their days at Louisville. I hated him at Louisville, by the way. Hated him at Louisville. But I like this move by MJ. I still just kind of think it really just puts a Band-Aid on things in a lot of senses. I think that the one thing you'll get with Montrezl Harrell that you won't necessarily get with Plumlee is the scoring. You'll get a lot of scoring from Montrezl Harrell, but with Plumlee you get a lot of rebounds, you get a lot of great passes. I mean, the offensive play is, debatable, I guess.
Great passes.
Yeah,
he tries to play point guard way too much, and it boils my blood.
No, yeah, well, and it's even worse when he's at the free throw line too.
God.
So, but you got to wonder if maybe they're kind of holding on to him just because they've really kind of considered him to be one of the kind of team players, I guess, and they love his energy. I guess JB loves his everything, his style of play, the energy he brings to the team. But I think it's a good move by the Hornets. We'll see how much it pays off. The Eastern Conference right now is really close in a bunch of different ways. So the Hornets aren't completely out of it. I think there's like 2 games that separate the top from the top seed in the Eastern Conference. So it's still in reach for the Hornets to end up making the playoffs. So still a lot of basketball left to play. The All-Star break, the second half of the All-Star break is going to be fun, that is for sure. So that's going to do it for this edition of Sports Wrap. But I feel like it's tradition now, so we got to end the show like we always do. So we got to end the show with some solid shout-outs. So I'm going to go around the table. Steven, you go first, man.
Yeah, I'm going to shout out my Pittsburgh Penguins, #1 in the Metro right now. No one had any faith in us with all of our old players, but Sidney Crosby going for his 500th goal tonight at home against the Philadelphia Flyers. Can't wait to sit on the couch here right after we leave here because the puck drops in a few minutes and watch Sid put that 500th goal in the net. Second greatest player of all time.
The Flyers are garbage anyways, aren't they?
But it's a rivalry thing.
Yeah,
I hate Philadelphia.
My shout out is to Van Jefferson, a ring, and met his newborn baby in the same night. That's the best day ever, right?
Absolutely.
Well, my shout out goes to my family real quick for listening. Hello for those who are watching. My sports shout out goes to Kirby, a 20-week-old Labrador Retriever who won the Puppy Bowl 18 MVP, had 4 touchdowns leading Team Fluff to a victory, including a double touchdown in the third quarter. Way to go, Kirby.
My shout out, congratulations, Kirby. My shout out is gonna go to my family. I'm gonna keep it personal. Shout out to them for their love, support, everything else. Shout out to my little brother. He started baseball workouts, or baseball season, I guess, started this week, and so I know he's really looking forward to that. And then I want shout out to y'all as well, you 3 sitting at the table, and everybody on the sports team, just for the amount of work that we put in here at this station. It's awesome to get to be a part of it, and I'm excited to finish out this semester strong with you all, and then pass the torch on to bigger and better things, I guess. So that's going to do it for this edition of Sports Wrap. It has been a pleasure as always. For Jeff Morrison, Cody Bear, Stephen Biddix, I'm Jason James. We're signing off for the time being, but don't go anywhere. I believe we do have a show on Thursday because there is no game at home, no basketball game at home.
I think we do have a game.
We do have a game.
We play Troy.
Okay.
Yep.
Is it Troy? Is it black or white out for Troy?
White out for Troy on Thursday.
Right. So no show on Thursday due to the basketball game. So if you are in Boone or around the surrounding areas, be sure you get to go to Holmes Convocation Center. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of exciting. The atmosphere is great there this season. So go show some love to your Mountaineers. So that's it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. Like always, have a good evening. God bless and